On the day of the 5th anniversary of his relationship with Zayne, he booked the best club in the city and invited all our mutual friends to celebrate. He knelt before me, tears streaming down his face, passionately proposing. Amidst the cheers and envious voices, my ring finger was adorned with an engagement ring. At that moment, a pure and innocent-looking female college student pushed the door open and said with a cute, innocent expression, "I'm sorry, I entered the wrong private room." I clearly saw Zayne's expression change slightly. He hurriedly made a clumsy excuse and left. I smiled faintly and nodded, not stopping him. After he left, I slowly took off the engagement ring and, with a blank expression, made a phone call. "Mom and Dad, I agree to the arranged marriage. I'll be home in 5 days to inherit the estate." When I was with Zayne, he was just a broke kid with nothing to his name. To protect his pride, I hid my identity as the daughter of a wealthy family and accompanied him as he built his life from scratch. Over the years, he has been incredibly attentive to me, taking care of all my needs and managing everything personally, afraid that I might suffer even the slightest grievance. At the moment of his success, he happily said in front of all the reporters, "My partner is the only light in my dark life. Without her trust and support, there would be no Zayne today." The host asked with barely concealed envy, "I heard you named the company YQ because of your wife." Zayne openly shows his favoritism and indulgence towards me in front of others. Upon hearing this, he gazes at the camera with even more tenderness. Y is derived from the character yen in my name, while Q comes from Quinn, my lover's name. The company's name is tightly bound together, just like my lover and I will be together forever. The scene was immediately filled with warm applause, and many audience members shed tears of emotion. Even the host couldn't help but bubble with envy. For a long time, our deeply romantic love story has been wildly circulated online. Not only did he give me a large share of the company's stock, but I was also sure to be by Zayne's side at any important occasion. Any man who gets close to me will be jealous for a long time, wishing he could install a camera on me. He is so domineering that I can see only him in my eyes. Everyone knows he loves me to the bone, to the point of madness and obsession. Everyone around me is very envious of me. My husband's career is soaring, and he is so deeply devoted and loyal. I feel that my life has been worth it. But they didn't know that Zayne's lover had sent me countless bed photos, each one crazy and each one in a different pose. Even before Zayne proposed, she messaged me, each word filled with provocation. "What does it matter that you and Zayne have loved each other for 5 years? What does it matter that you've helped him build his fortune from scratch? You're too boring, he has no love left for you, only gratitude. Do you believe that with just one look, I can summon him to be with me?" After Zayne left, I stared at the words "proposal successful" written on top of the cake, which was as tall as a person, and I couldn't snap out of it for a long time. Today, Zayne possesses wealth and power, with a swarm of admirers flocking to him. In fact, I understand the temptations of this circle better than he does. Before this woman appeared, I naively thought he was different from others. Who knew? I still lost the bet. A loss is a loss. So what? A dog that has eaten shit, I don't care at all. Half an hour later, Zayne returned, drenched in a light sweat, a chaotic scent of perfume wafting around him. "Quinn, I'm sorry, something urgent came up at the company that I had to deal with, and I made you wait for half an hour." He looked apologetic, raising his hand as if to gently touch my cheek, but I subtly dodged away, feeling utterly disgusted. I couldn't help but think of how many times those hands had touched that woman's body. And the friends around were all enviously teasing, "Oh, Quinn, you felt sorry after waiting for half an hour, but we've all waited for half an hour and you didn't feel sorry for us at all." Who doesn't know that in Zayne's eyes, there's only Quinn, cherished like something that might melt in the mouth, held in the palm of the hand for fear of breaking. What kind of incense did Quinn burn in her past life to find such a good husband like Zayne? I'm really envious. Zayne chuckled and scolded lightly, and when he looked down at me, his gentle gaze seemed like it could drown me. No matter how envious I am, it's useless. I will forever belong to Quinn alone, for all eternity, I am hers. A sarcastic smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I looked up and saw the faint kiss mark at his collar. Even though he tried to cover it up with concealer, It was still obvious with just a glance, the difference in color stark against his skin. This was that woman's show of power. It seemed like the last half hour had been quite intense. Is half an hour really enough? I suddenly spoke lightly, why don't you go again? At that moment, an unnatural look flashed across Zayne's face. He looked at me a bit nervously. Quinn, are you angry? I forced out a smile that seemed natural. You haven't done anything wrong to me, why would I be angry? How could I do anything wrong to you? You are the only one in my heart, everyone knows that. Amidst the envious and mocking voices, he tenderly took my hand, only to find my ring finger empty. The engagement ring was gone. His expression immediately turned to one of utter panic. Quinn, where's the ring? How did it disappear? I feigned confusion. Didn't you take the ring? Perhaps my serious attitude, combined with his obvious guilt, led Zayne to mistakenly believe that the ring had really been taken by him. When he frantically searched through his pockets and found nothing, I calmly suggested, could it be that you accidentally lost it during the half hour you were out? His expression stiffened for a moment, and he quickly forced himself to look at me with a semblance of calm. I'll go back and look for it, can you wait for me a little longer? I smiled faintly. If it's lost, then it's lost, no need to search for it. I said, I'm not someone who can't afford a ring. Zayne's eyes suddenly reddened a bit. This wedding ring was crafted by him after several sleepless nights, and inside the band is engraved a line of small words, Zayne is Quinn's heart, meaning that Quinn is Zayne's heart. Without me, he cannot survive. Quinn, it's my fault, I'm useless, I even lost something so important. He bent down his tall frame, holding me tightly in his arms, as if afraid I would suddenly disappear. Don't worry, I will make you an identical ring again, don't be angry, I'm so scared of you being angry. My chin rested on his shoulder, pressing down the pain in my heart. I slightly closed my eyes. Zayne, it's unnecessary. The music in the private room was loud, he didn't hear clearly, holding my face and asking me, baby, what did you just say? I turned my face, avoiding any of his touches. The light in my pupils was faint, nothing much. It was clear that I was not in high spirits. Before the engagement party was over, Zayne took me outside. The wind was blowing, and he immediately took off his suit jacket to wrap me up snugly. Then, Zayne went to drive, and my phone vibrated with another text message. The background was the club's restroom, the girl's strap slipping off her shoulder, her hand ambiguously running through Zayne's hair, and they were kissing deeply. The scene was quite stimulating. The caption read, "This time at your engagement party, where will it be next time?" I thought my heart would still hurt, but at this moment, I was probably numb to the extreme, feeling nothing at all. Zayne parked the car in front of me, got out, and opened the passenger door. A playful girl walked up to us, tilting her head and asking, "Excuse me, sir, I'm heading back to school. Is it convenient to catch a ride?" I tilted my head and clearly saw Zayne's face turn pale for a moment. He quickly stepped in front of me, as if afraid that the girl would do something harmful to me. It was inconvenient. Without a second thought, he immediately rejected the girl. Sierra didn't take the warning in his eyes seriously. Instead, she clasped her hands together and turned to me with a pitiful plea. "Sister, I've had quite a bit to drink, and it's too dangerous near the bar. Can you give me a ride? Please, please." I glanced lightly over her and the marks on her neck, not missing the provocation in her eyes. Unlike my bright and generous demeanor, she was like plain water, her eyelashes slightly damp with tears, making anyone feel a deep sense of pity. On the surface, she appeared pure and could act coy. In bed, she was fiery and enchanting. Indeed, Zayne could not escape the laws of men. I just glanced and then looked away, saying to see what he meant. After all, this isn't my car, so I naturally have no right to choose who the car should carry. I sat straight into the back seat and closed my eyes to rest. Zayne came over, helplessly discussing with me, "Baby, it's too late now. It's really hard to get a taxi, and it's a bit dangerous for her to stay here alone as a girl. How about we give her a ride? It's on the way to the university town anyway." I opened my eyes and looked at him with a half smile. "When did you become so kind?" I still remember when we first got together, Zayne would keep his distance from other women for my sake, afraid that I would overthink things. In the marketplace, his methods were decisive and efficient, leaving no opportunity for the enemy. Yet, I don't know when he stopped rejecting the deliberate closeness of the opposite sex, nor did he refuse their advances anymore. Perhaps he had hidden himself so well over these 5 years that I was completely unaware of it. Seeing my cold gaze, he immediately tried to appease me, placing my subtle emotions in a position of utmost importance. "If you're not happy, I'll refuse her right away and let her take a taxi back." In the end, I even tried to cover it up by saying that other people's lives have nothing to do with us, we just need to live our own lives well. I never realized Zayne was such a good actor. Having done it countless times with Sierra, he could still treat her like a stranger to this extent? I closed my eyes tightly, devoid of emotion. It is indeed dangerous for such a beautiful girl to take a taxi. Seeing that I had relaxed, Zayne seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as well, rubbing my hair with his palm. "Baby, you're still so kind." I self-deprecatingly tugged at my lips. "I hope you know that when I sell my shares, I can still think this way." Zayne wanted me to sit in the passenger seat, but I didn't move. Sierra quickly slipped in, taking on the demeanor of the mistress, plopping down in the passenger seat. "Get out, my passenger seat can only be occupied by Quinn." Zayne unhappily pulled her out. Sierra, who was dragged out, pitifully leaned against my car window. "Sister, look how stingy brother is, you definitely wouldn't be this stingy, right?" Then she provocatively said to me in a very soft voice, "After all, we even share men, let alone a co-pilot. What do you think, sister?" I looked at her. Sierra innocently blinked at me, then acted cute with Zayne. "Brother, look, sister didn't refuse me." Then she quickly dove back into the passenger seat. Zayne looked at me apologetically, and I had already closed my eyes again to rest. Such poor acting would dirty my eyes if I looked at it any longer. On the car, Sierra saw our photo together, her tone revealing a hint of jealousy. "Sister, thank you for giving me a ride. Having such a wonderful woman as a sister, my brother-in-law is truly lucky." While Zayne was driving, he kept glancing at my expression in the rearview mirror. My gaze was fixed outside the window, my face showing little emotion. Sierra, unwilling to accept that Zayne was only focused on me, sarcastically asked, "Sister, could you share the secret to your happy marriage?" When I heard this, my phone vibrated. I opened Facebook, and it was a bed photo from Sierra. I looked at the screen, where Zayne and she were closely intertwined, followed by her message on Facebook, "Do you know how obsessed Zayne is with me? As of today, we've used a total of 150 condoms. There was one time he was so eager that he didn't even have time to put one on. I couldn't bear to ruin his mood, so I just went along with it. Maybe I already have his baby in my belly. Sister, if I were you, I wouldn't make room for Zayne. After all, Zayne's body and heart are with me. You only accompanied him for 5 years, he no longer loves you. Can you just let us be happy?" I looked up at her, and Sierra in the front row shook her phone, smiling playfully and adorably. Seeing my pale face, Zayne, who was driving, immediately slowed down. "Quinn, are you feeling unwell? Should we go to the hospital?" I didn't show him Facebook. Xinqing is his territory. Once I leave, he will inevitably seal off Xinqing and bring me back. At that point, it will be hard for me to escape. I just want to reclaim my part, quietly end this relationship, and I don't want to engage in unnecessary struggles with him. It's fine. As soon as I finished speaking, an out-of-control truck came barreling towards us in the wrong lane. Zayne reacted quickly, swerving the steering wheel to avoid the collision. But unfortunately, amidst the chaos, there was the sound of a tire bursting, and the car flipped over. The 3 of us were trapped under the car, with Sierra's continuous screams ringing in our ears. And Zayne's heart-wrenching shouts, "Quinn! Quinn!" He kicked open the car door and crawled out from the billowing smoke. My head was struck, my vision blurred by blood, and Sierra was crying, very loudly. "Zayne, hurry and save me, hurry and save me." Zayne ignored me, crazily shouting my name, rushing towards me as if he had gone mad. "Quinn, hold on, I'm coming to save you." Even if my hands were cut by the shattered glass, flesh torn open, I didn't care and forcefully pried open the deformed passenger door, dragging me out from inside. Seeing the blood oozing from my forehead, with red-rimmed eyes, he trembled as he held me tightly in his arms. Quinn, wake up and look at me, don't scare me. It's my fault for not protecting you well." In a daze, I remembered 5 years ago. I climbed the mountain with him, but I accidentally twisted my ankle, and he carried me over the muddy path. The sunlight fell on his shoulder and profile, making him look exceptionally handsome. He kept comforting me, saying that with him around, everything would be fine. At that time, Zayne was still a junior in college, with the lingering innocence of youth. At that time, Zayne was filled with thoughts of me. I looked at him through eyes blurred by blood, stunned for a moment, then lowered my gaze. I couldn't understand why someone who loved me so desperately couldn't even control his lower body. The bystanders worked together to rescue Sierra from the car, but her skirt was torn during the rescue, unable to cover her body full of kiss marks. I found it somewhat amusing. Zayne carefully picked me up and placed me in the ambulance, then got in himself. Sierra's face was pale and green, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. She glanced back for a moment before looking away. When I woke up, I was already lying in the hospital. Blurrily opening my eyes, I saw Zayne exhaustedly sleeping beside me, still in the clothes he wore during the accident. I frowned and pulled my hand away, and Zayne immediately opened his eyes, sat up, and hugged me, his eyes reddening as he choked on his words and couldn't speak. "You scared me to death, Quinn. I'm so glad you're okay, so glad you're fine. If anything happened to you, I would never forgive myself for the rest of my life." He held me tightly, as if he had lost half his life, murmuring in a daze. Even the nurse who came in to change the dressing couldn't help but envy her for having such a good fiancé. "Quinn, when you were in a coma," Zayne looked as if he had lost his soul, neglecting his own injuries just to stay at the emergency room door, insisting on seeing you safe and sound. "He stayed by your side for a whole day and night, without sleeping or resting." Zayne had stubble on his chin, and there were heavy dark circles under his eyes. I looked at him expressionlessly and asked, "How is Miss Sierra?" Zayne's expression stiffened for a moment, but he quickly returned to normal. "She's just a stranger, why care about her? The most important thing now is to take care of yourself." Zayne's phone in his pocket vibrated. Seeing the caller ID, his gaze flickered for a moment, and he gently touched her face with tenderness in his eyes. "You're definitely hungry. I'll go out and buy you some porridge. You should rest well first." After he went out, I followed him all the way to the hospital room downstairs. Inside, Sierra's cries could be heard. "Why do you still want to sleep when you don't care about me? Zayne, you bastard, you only thought about Quinn in the car accident, completely ignoring my life or death. I hate you so much." She was frantically pounding on his chest, and Zayne impatiently seized her hands. "The only person I love is Quinn, and in the future, my wife will only be her. Haven't I told you this long ago? If you want to end it, then feel free to do so. After all, I won't miss you." Sierra cried even harder, her eyes filled with tears, like a lotus swaying in the wind and rain. Zayne sighed and, feeling a bit heartbroken, finally held her in his arms. "Besides the identity and love of Mrs. Zayne, I can give you anything you want. What more are you not satisfied with?" She wiped away her pitiful tears with her fingers. If she cried any more, it wouldn't look good. Sierra hugged his waist and sniffled, "Then you have to make it up to me." Zayne's expression was indulgent. "Okay. Then kiss me." Zayne smiled as he lowered his head and kissed her lips. Sierra blushed and reached her hand into his shirt. Soon, inappropriate sounds filled the room. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and captured the scene through the crack in the door, then turned around and left without a hint of emotion. However, the fingertips hanging by my side have already dug deeply into my palm. The pain and absence of pain in my heart have become unimportant. Soon, everything will come to an end. I'm fine, and I was discharged from the hospital the same day I woke up. When I was discharged, Sierra's text was more punctual than anything else. This time it was from the ward. I told him not to, but he still bothered me. The accompanying picture didn't provoke me because the videos on my phone were of higher quality. Zayne's call came in, and he spoke apologetically. "Baby, I can't leave the company right now. I'll have the driver take you home first. Can I make it up to you tonight?" I responded with a nonchalant and hung up the phone. Zayne has been particularly busy lately, always calling her to apologize, with excuses that revolve around how urgent company projects are and where he has to go on business trips. What he doesn't know is that every time he hangs up the phone, Sierra sends provocative videos. His so-called business trips are nothing but entanglements in another woman's bed. I pay little attention to each of his lies, which gives me the opportunity to prepare to leave. The day before leaving, I packed all the photos and couple items related to him into a suitcase. Dragging the suitcase, I arrived at the rental apartment where I had lived with him back then. The dim and damp one-bedroom apartment had no sunlight coming in, and even the bathroom was so narrow that it could only accommodate one person at a time. After Zayne and I succeeded in our venture, he bought this house, saying it would serve as a memento. He also said that when our child grows up, he would bring him here every year to reflect on the hardships and the sweetness. I opened the window for ventilation, and then I set fire to every photo in the suitcase. Since everything started here, let it end here as well. In the first photo, he wore a thin down jacket in the snow, running 5 kilometers just to buy me a steaming hot sweet potato. In the second photo, for a plush toy reward from the mall, he participated in a competition and scraped his knee, yet he still foolishly smiled and opened his arms for me to hug. In the third photo, it was our first contract signing, tears of excitement streaming down our faces, and this project earned us $3 million. In the fourth photo, he kissed me by the sea, repeatedly saying he loved me. These photos burned from day to night before finally coming to an end. As the photos turned to ashes, our 5 years also ended at that moment. As for those that couldn't be burned, I smashed them with my own hands, leaving a mess on the ground. After finishing everything, I left the rental house. When I returned to the villa, Zayne was waiting for me at the door like a big puppy. Seeing me get out of the car, he hurried over and wrapped me in his shawl. "Where have you been? Why didn't you answer your phone? It's so cold, why aren't you wearing more?" I calmly wrapped my shawl around me and walked in, just dealing with some waste. "Why did you suddenly come back?" Zayne ruffled my hair. "What waste do you still need to handle yourself? Next time give it to me, I'll help you deal with it." I didn't say anything, and after changing my shoes, I saw a table full of dishes. Zayne put away the shoes I changed into. "Have you forgotten what day it is, you little fool?" "Oh, today is our 5th anniversary of being in love." Zayne pulled out a chair, pressed down on my shoulder, and sat down. "Baby, happy 5-year anniversary." He magically produced a valuable necklace from behind him and fastened it around my neck. I consulted someone about a good date, and a week later is an auspicious day. "How about we get married then?" I looked up at him. "A week later?" Zayne tapped my nose with his fingertip and said with a lazy, affectionate smile, "I know the timing is a bit rushed, but my desire to marry you is even more urgent. But Quinn, don't worry, you don't have to concern yourself with the big and small matters of the wedding. For these years, I've been preparing for this marriage. You just stay at home and try on wedding dresses, getting ready to be my wife, okay?" I looked up and met his affectionate gaze, wanting to tell him no. I also wanted to tell him that he wouldn't have the chance to see me in a wedding dress. I remembered that there was still food in the pot. Zayne hurried to the kitchen, not noticing the phone on the table lighting up. I had never checked his phone, but to prove his loyalty to me, all his passwords were my birthday. So I easily clicked in. Inside was a message from Sierra. "Zayne, are you really not coming tonight? I'm in my safe period." There was also a picture of her dressed in a bunny costume, looking coy. Quite seductive. Before Zayne came out, I put my phone back in its place. And my phone received a text message, still from Sierra's provocation. She never tires of this. This time it was about the presidential suite at the Prosperity Hotel, where Zayne helped me get a membership card. I really like the floor-to-ceiling windows here. Guess what, will he celebrate the 5th anniversary with you, or will he enjoy the joy of the floor-to-ceiling windows with me? Baby, happy 5-year anniversary to us. Zayne came out of the kitchen holding the last dish, still wearing an apron. I bought this. I quickly closed my phone, glanced over the food on the table, feeling a bit unable to continue the act, and got up to leave. Zayne saw my expression and suddenly hugged me tightly from behind, looking anxious. Baby, did I do something wrong that made you unhappy? Just tell me, and I'll change, okay? I looked at his worried face for a long time and gently asked him, Zayne, do you really love me? Without any hesitation, he replied, of course I love you even more than I love myself. If it weren't for you, I would rather die. He even raised his finger and swore earnestly. I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and in the end, I laughed so hard my stomach hurt, and tears came out. He thought I was happy and was holding me tight to say some more sweet words, but then the phone rang abruptly. I quickly broke free from his hand and said, your phone is ringing. Zayne picked up his phone, and after seeing the caller ID, his gaze became unfocused. He stepped outside to say something, and then he walked back to me with a face full of apology. Baby, there's a problem with the project, I need to go to the site. I pulled at the corners of my lips, wiped away the tears of laughter, and immediately said, you go ahead and take care of it. Zayne was still apologizing, I'm sorry, baby, you have to spend our anniversary alone. I'll make it up to you tomorrow, okay? I nodded gently and considerately, sure. I booked a flight for tomorrow afternoon, he probably won't be able to make it up. He walked quickly, probably because Sierra's rabbit costume made him impatient. He didn't see me take off the necklace, didn't notice my unusual behavior, and wouldn't know that this was the last day for him and me. After tonight, I will disappear from Shin City. No matter how powerful he is, he won't be able to find me again. Zayne, forever lost Quinn. Can't be found again. The last day of leaving. I sold the haute couture dress he once gave me to a second-hand luxury store. The money I got and the jewelry he gifted me were also donated to charity. As for the screenshots of the messages Sierra sent me on my phone, I printed them all out and placed them on the coffee table in the living room. The photos and videos were also edited and emailed to Zayne, with all employees of YQ Company copied, timed to coincide with the moment the plane took off. As for the shares in my hand, they were originally a part of me. Back when I started a business with him, I endured just as much hardship as he did, so when I sold them at a low price to Zayne's competitor, I felt no reluctance or guilt. I have always held grudges. If someone hurts me, I will make sure they don't have it easy. Not to mention, it was the man I loved deeply and unreservedly for 5 years. My heart, full of wounds, needs solace. After signing, the money arrived in my private account. I took my suitcase to the airport. My phone kept vibrating. At this point, Zayne must have known about me selling my shares. The announcement in the airport was notifying that the flight was about to take off. I turned back for one last look at the bustling airport, tossed my SIM card into the trash, and walked into the cabin. Goodbye, Zayne. Never again, Zayne. What nonsense are you talking? This is my company, and I want you to get out. Galen sat in the recliner in Zayne's office, casually spinning around. A document was thrown onto the desk. Quinn has already sold 60% of his shares to me, so I have more shares than you. From now on, I am the president of YQ, so please leave my office. Zayne incredulously flipped through the documents, seeing Quinn's signature at the end, and staggered back 2 steps, frantically calling her. But all he heard was the cold prompt, sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service. Just then, a message popped up in his inbox. It was from Quinn. Zayne seemed to realize something, trembling as he clicked in. The video played a blushing scene, causing his pupils to constrict in waves. In the next second, he disregarded Galen and rushed out of the office like a madman. The people in the office area glanced at him with indifferent eyes as he passed by. The murmurs were even more piercing. Zayne's deep feelings for Quinn were all an act. It turned out he had long been keeping a mistress outside. Quinn was so beautiful, having shared both joys and hardships with him for so many years, only to have her affections misplaced in the end. Men are just cheap, a home flower is never as fragrant as a wildflower. Zayne didn't care how these people cursed him. At this moment, his heart was racing, and he ran several red lights to get home. Seeing the empty villa, it felt as if a large piece of his heart had been suddenly hollowed out. Quinn! Quinn! Zayne stumbled up the stairs, frantically opening each room in the villa, but there was no sign of Quinn. Even in the bedroom, bathroom, changing room, and study, her clothes, jewelry, toiletries, cosmetics, and everything related to her vanished like a dream, leaving not even a single hair behind. Every place that held her belongings was empty. The group photos in the album were also gone, leaving only his solo pictures, and the frame on the bedside table was bare. Zayne's pitch-black eyes trembled, his hands cradling an empty frame, his knees weak, kneeling on the ground with a gaze that had lost focus. A surge of panic pressed down on his nerves. This can't be happening, this can't be, you wouldn't be so cruel. He instinctively denied the facts he had seen with his own eyes, took out his phone, and called his assistant, lock down the city, conduct strict checks at all airports and stations. If you see Quinn, make sure to detain her at all costs. Quinn is an orphan, she can't survive without me. She must still be in the city. Hanging up the phone, Zayne stumbled out of the room, and as he went downstairs, he accidentally rolled down the stairs. He wanted to stand up, but his legs had no strength. Zayne fell there, tears streaming uncontrollably, the empty living room echoing with the man's choked, suppressed sobs. A gust of wind blew by, sending the papers on the table flying. A few landed in front of Zayne. Seeing the chat logs printed on the paper, Zayne's eyes turned red. Each chat log felt like a heavy hammer striking his head. And her final cold reply was more like a sharp blade, stabbing straight into Zayne's heart, leaving it a bloody mess. It hurt him to the point of wishing for death. Her last reply to Sierra was, "Wishing you a harmonious marriage and a house full of children and grandchildren." She had long known his secret that made him tremble with fear, yet she continued to cooperate with his self-assured performance that he thought was flawless. If he had been a bit more observant and realized her oddness earlier, if Sierra had been more reserved, would everything have been different? It's all that bitch's fault. Zayne gritted his teeth as he got up from the ground and rushed out of the villa. Sierra sat on the sofa, wearing the latest Chanel outfit that Zayne had bought for her. In addition, there were several bags worth hundreds of thousands on the table, along with a number of high-end clothes. "Daughter, did your boyfriend buy all of these for you? They aren't cheap, you know. Together, they must be worth millions." Sierra's brother Tony looked greedy. "Sis, your boyfriend is so rich. You better hold on tight to this golden son-in-law." Sierra raised her chin, feeling that they were naive. "This is completely off. My boyfriend is the president of YQ, worth billions. Once I become Zayne's wife, this money won't mean anything." "Tony, didn't the news say he has a fiancée?" Sierra scoffed, "That bitch is like a dead fish in bed, I can get Zayne to kick her out in no time." Sierra spoke with confidence, but unexpectedly, a slap caught her off guard, leaving her dizzy. As she regained her senses, she saw Zayne with bloodshot eyes. Sierra covered her face. Zayne, with a loud slap, another resounding slap. This time, Sierra was directly knocked to the ground, dazed and dizzy. Tony and Sierra's mother hurried over to help her up, recognizing him as the big boss from the news, Sierra's benefactor, and dared not act recklessly. "Zayne, why did you hit me?" Sierra looked at the indifferent Zayne in confusion. Zayne's fist was clenched so tightly that his entire arm and chest were trembling. "Didn't I warn you that our matters cannot be known by Quinn? Didn't I warn you that if anything happens to Quinn, I will make you wish you were dead?" Sierra was still playing dumb. "I don't know what you're talking about." The next second, Zayne slammed the printed chat log onto her face. The paper cut her cheek. "Sierra, what do you think you are, daring to show off in front of Quinn?" When Sierra saw those chat records, her face turned pale, and she began to wail and pretend to be pitiful. "Zayne, I was wrong, I just love you too much, I want to be your only other half, so." Before she could finish her sentence, her slender neck was tightly gripped by the man, and she couldn't catch her breath. Zayne. The suffocating pain brought her closer to death for the first time. His eyes grew colder by the moment, brimming with evident hostility. My only one is Quinn. Sierra, who gave you the courage to provoke Quinn? She is more important than my life. Who gave you the courage to hurt her? Sierra desperately beat on his arm, her eyes filled with fear. Tony and Sierra's mother rushed over to push Zayne. Zayne, let go. You're going to choke her to death. Zayne couldn't hear that at all, mumbling to himself, if I choke her to death, maybe Quinn will come back. Sierra, terrified and pale, used her last bit of strength to shout, Zayne, I'm pregnant. I'm carrying your child. Zayne's gaze fell on her abdomen, his pupils constricting. Sierra took advantage of his distraction to break free, falling to the ground and coughing violently while clutching her neck. So, you're pregnant. Zayne was not as pleased as she had imagined. His expression was devoid of emotion, radiating a chilling aura that filled her with dread. How dare you, you slut, get pregnant? Did she think that with a child she could finally push Quinn away? It was simply laughable. Zayne was indifferent, my child, only Quinn can be born. He yanked Sierra up, to get rid of the child. As long as he got rid of the child, as long as he drove Sierra out of the city, everything could return to how it was before. Quinn could come back. Yes, that's it. Ignoring Sierra's cries, Zayne shoved her into the car. Zayne, this is your child, you can't get rid of it, you can't get rid of it. Zayne coldly grabbed her hair, this is a wild child, understand? This wild child, Quinn's child is my child. Sierra was frightened by his terrifying aura, shrinking back and desperately banging on the car window. She never expected that the man who had been tender in bed would turn so crazily indifferent after just one day apart. Help! Mom, brother, come save me! As Tony rushed in, he was knocked down by Zayne with a single punch, and Sierra's mother could only cry out in despair. This attracted quite a crowd. Soon, the police arrived on the scene and rescued Sierra. Zayne, you have no right to force her to have an abortion. Hearing the police's words, Zayne fixed his gaze on Sierra and suddenly smiled coldly. All right then, let her give birth. Zayne made a phone call and ordered the retrieval of all the bags and jewelry given to Sierra. Sierra became a poor student from a humble background once again. Without money, Tony couldn't stop complaining, well, now my bride price and house are gone. You insisted on having an abortion, and you really thought that if you had the baby, the big boss would marry you? Without money, Sierra's mother's expression grew darker by the day, useless thing, not only can you not keep a man, but you can't even keep money. What good are you? Sierra held her abdomen, her eyes filled with helplessness. At first, she thought Zayne was just trying to scare her. But later, when she couldn't reach Zayne by phone and found herself blocked on Facebook, completely losing contact with him, she realized Zayne wasn't joking. Yet she still held on to a glimmer of hope. She couldn't believe that after the child was born, Zayne would really abandon his own flesh and blood. After searching for a whole month, Zayne had nearly turned the entire city upside down, yet there was no news of Quinn. She had vanished, disappearing from his world with a resolute stance. When the assistant found Zayne, he was in the villa, anxiously clutching the mattress, drunk to the point of oblivion, his hair long enough to cover his eyes, and his chin was covered in stubble, no longer the spirited man he once was. Zayne still hasn't found Quinn. The assistant kicked the wine bottle and walked over. Zayne's lifeless eyes no longer held any sparkle, only tightly clutching the mattress, which still retained a trace of Quinn's scent. The assistant sighed. If only they had known today, there would have been no need for what happened before. However, they found out that Quinn had visited this apartment before leaving. The assistant gave him the address. Zayne saw the address, his eyes filled with a hint of anger, and he stumbled to his feet, staring motionlessly at the address. The assistant saw him drunk and kindly took him back to the apartment. Upon arriving at the apartment, Zayne did not see Quinn, only a floor covered in ashes, a choking pain in his throat. He gently picked up a corner of the cherished photo, revealing only half of Quinn's face. This was the only thing she had left behind. He knelt on the ground, pressing the photo against his heart aching uncontrollably. "Quinn, you are truly cruel. Quinn, where are you?" The sobs calling her name went unheard. The assistant handed him the resignation letter. "Zayne, Quinn has already left, and you can't get him back. You should pull yourself together. The company is now in Galen's hands, barely hanging on, fighting for survival, and the employees have already started to leave one after another." Zayne murmured Quinn's name as if he hadn't heard him speak. The assistant sighed, put down the resignation letter, and got up to leave. Zayne suddenly spat a mouthful of blood onto the ground, and as he fell, he saw a ring. The ring was stained with blood. He carefully picked up the ring from the ashes and wiped it clean with his clothes. Inside the band, it was inscribed, "Quinn is Zayne's heart." Zayne hunched his back, gripping the ring tightly against his chest, so tightly that the veins on the back of his hand bulged, so tightly that his whole body trembled uncontrollably. "Quinn, you knew all along. Quinn, you are so cruel. Ever since the day I proposed, you have been thinking of leaving me. Quinn. I know I was wrong, please come back. I beg you to come back." In November of the same year, YQ announced its bankruptcy. Far away in the capital, I learned of this news from the reports. Shaking the red wine in my hand, my gaze fell indifferently on the television screen. He once said that the company's name was tightly bound together, just like we would be together forever. Now that he and I have gone our separate ways, the company has also come to an end in the city of Shin. At that moment, someone gently draped a shawl over my shoulders. "Do you know him?" the man asked softly. I adjusted the shawl, shifted my gaze away from the screen, and did not hide the fact that he was my ex-boyfriend. The man was momentarily taken aback, then stared at me intently. "Do you still love him?" I shook my head without hesitation. "No, I don't. Call me cold-blooded or heartless." The moment Zayne hurt me, I had already detached myself with a clear mind. Life is short, just a few decades, why waste it on unworthy people? I love whoever loves me. I kick whoever hurts me. This is my view on love. The man smiled with a sense of relief. "There's a project in Shanghai that requires the two of us to make a trip." Mark said this while observing my expression. I opened my lips and asked him, "Do I really have to go in person?" Mark carefully chose his words, saying the project is very important, and it's best if I go myself, but if you're not happy about it, I can go on my own. Mark is my arranged partner, impeccable in every aspect. I can't say I like him, nor can I say I dislike him, my feelings are as lukewarm as water. But if it's for the family's needs, I will naturally go. All right. It snowed on the day I arrived in Shanghai. I was wearing a red velvet mermaid dress, and as I moved my legs, the dress spread out like ripples. I arrived at the project site with Mark, and after the inspection, we walked out of the company. At the entrance, I saw Zayne. Quinn. After 3 months apart, Zayne seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant, no longer the spirited figure of the past, his eyes glistening as he looked at me, cruelly blocked by the security guard 10 meters away. "Quinn, you're back. Quinn, I miss you so much." He searched the whole world for her, almost exhausting all his wealth, and he was going crazy thinking about her. But he doesn't know that I hired a specialized hacker to protect my privacy, making it impossible for him to find me easily. I just glanced at him lightly, as if I didn't recognize him, gathered my black coat, and left in my high heels. "Quinn!" Zayne screamed desperately, struggling to break free. He was pushed to the ground by the security guards. "Let me go, that's my fiancé, let me go." "Fiancé?" The security guards laughed. "She is not your fiancé. Quinn is the only daughter of the Tang family in the capital and the heir of the Tang clan. Her marriage partner is from the Gu family, one of the 4 prominent families in the capital." Zayne felt as if he had been struck by lightning, numbly watching Quinn's departing figure. A tall man took off his coat and gently draped it over her shoulders. "Impossible, this is impossible. Quinn is an orphan just like him, How could she be the young lady of the Tang family? There must be a mistake. Quinn. Quinn. His cries could not earn him even a glance from the woman. Zayne was thrown out, and Sierra, with her big belly, helped him up. She was still saying provocative words. Zayne, Quinn must have hooked up with a new rich guy, that's why she won't acknowledge you. Even if YQ went bankrupt, Zayne still had quite a bit of money and villas under his name. As for Sierra's interference, it was reported to the school, and she was expelled. Sierra's only support now is Zayne, so she has been persistently clinging to him. With a loud slap, Zayne forcefully knocked her to the ground, his eyes filled with bloodshot veins. I won't allow you to say that about her. Sierra's cheeks instantly flushed, and the jealousy in her eyes was almost tangible. I told you, what can you do? Do you think you're still the old Zayne? You are such a jerk. If you really loved her, why did you sleep with me so many times back then? It's not like you could control your lower half. She doesn't want you, you deserve it. Zayne, you can only be tied to me for life, ha 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 ha. Zayne was provoked by Sierra's words, and he stepped forward to slap her hard several times. Sierra screamed, her mouth bleeding, and she felt a wave of pain in her lower abdomen. Until someone shouted, the pregnant woman is bleeding. Bleeding. Zayne was pulled away by bystanders, and Sierra had already fainted from the pain. Sitting in the car and witnessing this scene, I slowly rolled up the window. I never expected that Sierra had gotten pregnant as she wished. But this child probably won't be able to be kept. But what does it have to do with me? Let's go. I made a sound, and Mark drove away from the scene. In the rearview mirror, Zayne was frantically chasing the car, falling and getting back up, his knees a bloody mess. Mark asked, if this keeps up, he would be hit by a car. Are you sure you don't want to go down and take a look? I ultimately got off the car. The pure white snow fell on my black shawl as I looked down at the man who once loved me like his life. Quinn, I miss you so much. Quinn, will you come back to me? My legs are tightly held by him, he pleads desperately, blood staining the hem of my dress. I only said 2 words of indifference, not good. Zayne's face turned pale. Why? Is it just because I cheated? He immediately earnestly promised, I will never dare again. I won't dare anymore. Can we start over, okay? After 5 years together, Zayne has always been high and mighty, orchestrating everything. It was precisely because I told him I was an orphan that he felt free to cheat, thinking I couldn't live without him. It is precisely because I told him that I am all alone and that in this life, he is the only one for me, that he feels I cannot do without him. I faintly curled my lips, but on what basis do you think I would want a dog that has eaten shit? I clearly told him word by word, Zayne, it was you who pushed me away with your own hands. From now on, how many women you want has nothing to do with me. Of course, how my future will be, who I will be with, has nothing to do with you anymore. I kicked his hand away and got into the car. Zayne fell to the ground in a disheveled state, momentarily stunned by my words. Quinn, can we go back to the past? Quinn, give me one more chance. Zayne pounded on the car window. I slowly closed my eyes. Mark turned on the car music, playing soft tunes that drowned out the heart-wrenching cries from outside. The car drove away. Sierra's child could not be saved, and even the uterus could not be preserved. How could the Zhou family let Zayne go, bringing a dozen people from the village to confront Zayne and demand an explanation? They wanted Zayne to pay. During the argument, Zayne and Tony accidentally fell from the upstairs together. Tony was left partially paralyzed, destined to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, while Zayne seemed to lose his sanity from that day on. Seeing a girl with a similar figure to Quinn, I eagerly shouted at her, calling her Quinn, even kneeling on the ground to beg for her forgiveness. Passers-by were quite frightened and called the police. Later, Zayne was sent to a mental hospital. The remaining money in his name was partly used to compensate the Zhou family's medical expenses and partly to pay for the treatment at the mental hospital. It snowed again that day. He sat in the yard dressed lightly, the snow falling on his shoulders and in his hair. Zayne carefully stroked the ring, whispering, "Quinn, I found the ring again, this time I will never lose it. Never lose it again."